far north, where the wind speaks in slow tongues and the fire flickers gently against old wooden walls, the Vikings once lay beneath woolen furs, listening not only to the silence of the dark, but to the whispers of old gods. Long before the final dawn, before spears clashed and the sky tore apart, there were signs, soft signs, that the end was coming. Not all stories begin with a roar. Some begin with a breath, a sigh, a distant hum in the bones of the earth. Tonight, as you rest, we will travel back to that hush, the deep quiet before Ragnarok. Long before the great serpent stirred in the depths of the sea, the hearths of Midgard burned quietly. Inside long houses roofed with turf and bound with thick wooden beams, Viking families slept in groups, wrapped in warmth and story. The scent of pine smoke curled in the air, mingling with the oil of fish lamps and the faint sweetness of hay-stuffed bedding. Children lay close to their mothers, warriors beside their shields. Sleep to them was not an interruption, but a sacred rhythm, a pause woven into the fabric of life. Their nights were quiet, but not silent. The creaking of timber, the gentle snort of oxen in the adjoining stable, the low murmur of wind around the eaves, it all whispered of the world beyond the door. And sometimes, when the wind grew strange, or the wolves howled too long from the tree line, the old ones would speak of omens. It began slowly. First, the moon seemed to linger longer on the horizon, as if uncertain of its rise. The stars, those fixed eyes of fate, shifted ever so slightly in the sky. Not to the eye of a busy farmer, no, but to the vulva, the seeress who watched the heavens with quiet intensity. The message was clear. Something old was waking. In dreams, Odin's ravens began to fly to strange places. In visions, wolves ran across rivers of fire. And in whispers, those who slept between twilight and sunrise, those who woke in the second sleep, felt something moving beneath the land. The second sleep, the Vidarsvefen, was sacred among the Norse. A gap between two sleeps, where the mind was thin like mist, and the gods could reach in, and now in this in-between state many began to hear it. A rumble far beneath the roots of the world. No one spoke it aloud at first. The skalds did not yet sing of it. The Jarl did not yet call a council, but the animals knew. Dogs grew restless, whimpering at the walls for no reason. Goats refused to return to their pens, staring northward as if waiting for something only they could sense. And then the howl came, not loud, not near, but it curled through the forests like mist, deep and sorrowful. It wasn't a cry of hunger. It was the cry of awakening. Far below, bound in chains crafted from the roots of paradox, soundless footsteps, the breath of a fish, the spit of a bird, Fenrir stirred. His sleep had been long but not dreamless. He had felt time unravel in his veins like threads pulling against fate. And now the wolf was listening. The vulva felt it first. Her hut lay beyond the edge of the village, where the birch trees whispered and the moss grew thick over runestones. That night, as the fire dimmed low, her bones began to hum. Not ache, hum. as though some great presence moved across the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree, and brushed her soul with the edge of a shadow. She stood in silence, staring into the fire. The flames did not dance. They stilled, frozen in place. Then, without warning, the coals cracked in the shape of a serpent. She closed her eyes. She had seen this before. Once in her youth, when the sun failed to rise for 3 days, and again on the night her child was born, under blood moon sky. Now it came once more. Ragnarok did not come with a trumpet blast. It came with dreams, and the dreams were spreading. Out in the far fjords, where the waves touched the ends of the earth, the sea slept like a beast with half-lidded eyes. Beneath it, Jörmungandr turned once in his eternal coil. The Midgard serpent had slept long, wrapped around the world, tail in mouth. But that night he loosened his grip, just slightly. A ripple passed through the waters, not enough to be seen by sailors, but enough for the whales to dive deep, and the seagulls to rise as one from the rocks. A silence fell over the ocean. It was not a storm, but the memory of one. It was not the end, but the intake of breath before it. In Asgard, Heimdall stood at the edge of the rainbow bridge. He held his horn Gjallarhorn tight to his side. He did not blow it, but he looked to the horizon, to a crack in the clouds that wasn't there before. He knew. The gods were not yet speaking. They still drank their mead, still feasted in golden halls, still laughed in the fading light. But Heimdall did not laugh. He listened, for even in the realm of the gods the wind had changed, and so the world waited. Like a log placed in a hearth, not yet aflame, but warm at its core, the mortals dreamed. The gods grew still. The creatures of the woods looked skyward, and beneath all of it, the heartbeat of the cosmos changed rhythm. A rhythm not of life, but of release, not of fear, but of inevitability. The vulva lit a candle and whispered into the dark, "Sleep well, world. Sleep while you still can." In the deep silence of a night that lingered too long, when even the wind forgot how to move, the world lay wrapped in an uneasy slumber. The stars watched, unblinking, ancient, patient. And somewhere far below the surface, past soil and stone, past the gnarled roots of Yggdrasil itself, something exhaled. It was not a loud breath. It was like a sigh against eternity. Fenrir, the bound wolf, did not dream in pictures. His dreams were made of pressure, of resistance. In his sleep, he did not see. He remembered. The tug of chains woven from 6 impossible things. The last look in Tyr's eyes before betrayal. The pain not of flesh, but of purpose. For even the gods feared him not for what he had done, but for what he would one day do. And so beneath the world, in a cave that no sun had ever touched, the wolf stirred in his sleep. He was dreaming of breaking. Above him, the roots of the world tree reached down like fingers, old and knotted, full of memory and warning. Yggdrasil groaned not from pain, but from anticipation. Its limbs had held the 9 realms in balance for eons, but now something was shifting. The sap inside began to thicken, slow like syrup in winter. Birds that once perched along its uppermost branches had flown away days ago. The squirrels who danced from bough to bough sat still, listening. And in the heartwood of that sacred tree, cracks began to form. In Midgard the signs grew bolder. The earth was not calm. Small tremors passed beneath farmhouses and forests, not enough to knock over a stone, but enough to rattle the old wooden spoons hanging by the hearth, enough to make children stir in their sleep, enough for the wise to fall silent mid-sentence. In Asgard, the gods noticed, but did not speak. Odin sat longer in his hall, eye-shadowed with worry, tracing the carvings on his throne with idle fingers. He said nothing, but Hugin and Munin flew closer to his shoulders, restless. The birds brought dreams, not words. Dreams of ocean splitting, of fire climbing the sky. Odin understood, but held his silence like a shield. Thor, too, felt the weight in the air. His hammer grew heavier, not in mass, but in meaning. He polished it each evening, not for battle, but to reassure himself it was still there, still his. In his bones, thunder waited, but the sky remained dry. Even the halls of Freya were quieter than usual. The Vanir goddess wandered her garden under moonlight, whispering to the flowers. They did not answer. Their petals, once open and bright, folded inward, tight, withdrawn, as though bracing for a wind not yet come. And Loki smiled. He always had, but now it was a different smile. Not mischief, not delight, recognition. Down in Niflheim, Hel stirred on her throne of bones. The dead did not sleep, but they waited. And in that waiting something changed. The rivers of ice slowed. The fog that wrapped the land grew thicker, curling around the memories of those who had passed. Even the silence deepened, became too quiet, as if listening for a knock that had not yet come. And there, in that cold dominion, Hel placed a hand to the earth. She felt the tremble, not fear, alignment. She stood. No one saw. No one needed to. For when Hel stood, it was not for ceremony. It was because the timeline of the living had begun to tilt. Back in Midgard, animals behaved strangely. Bees refused their hives. Horses refused their gates. Owls flew during daylight. Even the stones, yes, the stones, seemed to hum beneath bare feet. In one village, a newborn refused to cry. The mother sang. The father prayed. But the child only watched, wide-eyed, unblinking, as if already remembering a past life. And the Völva, the old seeress who lived just beyond the trees, she no longer dreamed. She listened. Every night now the fire in her hut burned lower than expected. The kindling did not crackle as it once had. The flame seemed to hesitate before catching. One evening she placed her palm over the fire, not close enough to burn, but near enough to feel. There was no heat, only vibration, as though the flame itself had become an echo of something deeper. She whispered to it, "Who stirs beneath?" The fire did not answer in words, but in the smoke, Shapes formed, a tooth, a chain, a shattered branch, a horn not yet blown. She knew then, Ragnarok would not begin with a war cry. It would begin with forgetting. Forgetting how to sleep without fear. Forgetting the songs that held the sky in place. Forgetting which dreams belonged to gods and which to mortals. And once that forgetting set in, the wolf would wake. The dreams returned to Fenrir, only now they had sound. The sound of old iron breaking, of root systems snapping like dry twigs, of footsteps too large to belong to any creature still living. He did not know whether these sounds came from memory or prophecy, but he opened one eye, only one, and the world flinched. In Asgard, a feast was being held that night. Golden mead flowed. Laughter echoed from hall to hall, but it was strained, thinner than before. Even Baldur, beloved Baldur, seemed more thoughtful than usual. He looked to the windows often, though there was no one there. Frigg watched her son, watched the way his fingers rested on the rim of his cup, but did not lift it. She said nothing. Mothers know when a silence holds more weight than a storm. Odin rose to toast. His voice, though strong, trembled, not with fear, but with ancient fatigue. He had lived long enough to see echoes turn into patterns, and patterns into prophecy. He lifted his horn. To peace, he said. Deep beneath the rainbow bridge, where few had ever walked, the Bifrost hummed with tension. Colors once brilliant had dulled ever so slightly, not enough to notice, unless you were Heimdall, and Heimdall noticed everything. He stood watch as he always had, but now his eyes flickered more often to the horizon, and not just the visible one. He saw through layers, through mist, through time, through fate, and he saw it then, a shadow, not yet formed, but destined. He gripped Gjallarhorn tighter, not to blow it, not yet, but to remind himself that he still could. Not a single god repeated it, for they knew that to speak the word might be to break it. In the forests of Midgard, old trees began to lean in directions they never had before. Rivers ran a touch warmer, and the winds grew curious. They began to speak in languages not heard since the first fire. Children awoke with phrases on their lips they had never learned, words that sounded like runes before they were carved. And the dreams, oh, the dreams, they grew louder. The vulva left her hut one night. She did not bring her staff. She did not bring her cloak. Only her hands, calloused and knowing. She walked barefoot into the woods. The moss gave way beneath her feet, soft as breath. She came to a clearing where the air felt thick with meaning. There, beneath the stars, she knelt and pressed her ear to the ground. She heard it, not a sound but a feeling. The earth was inhaling, one long, deep breath, and she knew what always came after breath. Release. She returned to her hut and opened a wooden chest bound with iron bands. Inside lay the runes, ancient, sacred, worn from generations of touch. She cast them on the floor. They did not scatter. They formed a circle on their own. In the center, a single rune glowed faintly. The Thurisaz, the rune of giants, of power, of conflict and protection, turned to destruction. She did not smile, but she did nod. "Then it begins," she said softly, and the fire beside her went out. On its own. Back in his sleep, Fenrir shifted again. The chains groaned, not snapped, not yet, but the tension built, and with every heartbeat of the wolf, the heartbeat of the world shifted with it, no longer calm, no longer safe, but waiting, balanced on the edge of memory and myth. A pause stretched so long it forgot it was waiting. In Vanaheim, Njord felt the sea's refusal to answer. The tides had become inconsistent. Boats moved without wind. The fishermen dreamed of waves that whispered, and the fish no longer surfaced near the shore. They had gone deep, very deep, where something ancient stirred. The gods gathered more often now, not in panic, but in proximity, like animals before a storm. They drank, they sang, they told stories, but always with one eye on the door, with one ear turned toward silence. And in that silence grew a knowing that all things end, and some ends begin slowly, with a sigh, with a silence, with a wolf dreaming of open fields, and a horn not yet blown. In the village, elders sat by their fires longer each night, not out of cold, but instinct, as if leaving the fire too soon would cause it to forget them. They spoke in low tones, not of war or harvest, but of old stories, the kind whispered behind hands, tales of Fenrir, of the serpent, of the sky turning red. They were not frightened, not yet, but their voices carried the dust of memory, and memory, in times like these, is prophecy with a longer shadow. The children sensed it too, not in fear, but in wonder. They drew pictures of wolves with stars in their mouths. They hummed songs they'd never been taught, and they asked questions without knowing why. Why does the moon stay so long? Why are the birds quiet? Why do the trees talk more at night? And the parents, they answered gently, because they knew those were the right questions, and in asking them, the world was already changing. One night, as the village lay still, a great horned owl passed overhead. It did not call. Its wings moved in silence, but its shadow touched every rooftop, one by one, as if counting. And when it vanished beyond the trees, a hush settled over the land that felt like reverence, not dread, a knowing hush, the kind that comes before the sky splits open. In Helheim, the dead stirred, not to rise, not yet, but to watch. Their sockets, hollow and ancient, turned upward, not to the sky, but to the roots. And Hel, standing alone on her black stone platform, lifted a single hand. A raven landed. It carried no message, only silence, but she read it nonetheless. She closed her eyes and whispered, "So it has begun." And far, far below, in the cave of paradox where chains met prophecy, Fenrir opened both eyes. The left was filled with night, the right, day. And between them burned a hunger older than names. But he did not move, not yet. He only listened. And above him, in 1,000 longhouses by firelight and whisper, the last deep sleep of the world began to fray, not all at once, but slowly, like a thread coming loose in a worn sleeve. And as the wind rose, as the gods paused, as the stars leaned closer, the wolf smiled, and somewhere, across all realms, an unspoken truth passed from dream to dream. The end would not come suddenly. It would come patiently, with eyes closed, and the breath of the world waiting to exhale. In a cave where no name lived, silence wrapped itself around stone like moss. The air was still, thick with the breath of time, and in the deepest hollow of that cave there lay a god. Loki, shapeshifter, speaker of riddles, breaker of trust. He did not sleep. He dreamed with open eyes, bound to 3 jagged rocks by chains forged from the entrails of his own son. He had once thrashed like a storm, screamed like wildfire. But now he lay still, not in peace, in patience. Above him, a serpent hung from the ceiling, its venom dripping slow and eternal onto Loki's brow. But this night something had changed, not in the cave, in the silence. It was no longer whole. There was a flaw in it, a ripple, like a whisper heard behind a wall. Loki's eyes opened, gold and terrible. Gold. The drop of venom did not land. It hung for a moment, suspended, as if the laws that bound it had been questioned. Loki smiled, not with joy, but with certainty. He had waited. He had counted every moment not with clocks, but with hunger, not with sorrow, but with rhythm. And now that rhythm was changing. He flexed one finger, just one, and the chain around his wrist pulsed, not broke, not yet, but it trembled. Far above, in the upper boughs of Yggdrasil, a tiny crack formed in one of its branches, so small that not even Heimdall could see it. But the squirrels paused, the birds took flight, and the Norns, those who weave fate at the base of the tree, they looked at each other. For the first time in an age they dropped a thread. In Helheim, Hel stood. She had always sat upon her throne of cold, unmoving bone, half her face bright, half in decay. But this night she rose. The dead turned their faces, not with fear, with reverence. She walked to the edge of her realm and looked up, not at the sky, but through the stone above, through the roots of Yggdrasil, and she whispered, "It begins." Above the land, something in the earth began to stir, not a quake, a breath. The wolves howled, not for prey, but for remembrance, as if they had been told a story in their sleep, and now, upon waking, could not forget. Shepherds found their flocks scattered. Dogs refused commands, staring into shadows with ears pressed flat. The animals remembered something that men had not yet dreamed. At the edge of Asgard, the Bifrost bridge pulsed like a fading rainbow. Heimdall, ever watchful, frowned. He felt it, not in his sight, but in his bones. The bridge was not cracking, but it was growing, uncertain, as though it could no longer remember which realm came next. He placed his hand upon the stone, and in the quiet he heard a low hum, not from the bridge, from beyond it. Thor tightened his grip on Mjolnir. He had not been called to battle, yet the hammer buzzed in his hand. He looked to the sky. No thunder, no lightning, just stillness. But within that stillness, he sensed something waiting. Not a foe. A moment. And Thor, for the first time, felt the burden of strength. Back in the cave, the serpent blinked, and in that blink, Loki moved. The chains did not scream. They did not shatter with fury. They sighed, a sound like cold wind through hollow bones. One link gave way, then another, then all. The venom no longer fell. The god stood. He did not run. He did not roar. Loki stepped forward, each footfall like the ticking of a long-forgotten clock. He emerged not into day nor night, but something in between, a space between realms, a threshold where order did not rule. There he smiled again, and the wind replied. At the base of the world tree the wind shifted. A single bird, neither raven nor dove, rose into the sky. It did not flap. It glided, wings outstretched, as if carried by something ancient. And beneath it, the roots of Yggdrasil turned a deep, quiet red. Not fire, not yet, but the color of a beginning unmade. In Asgard the sky did not break. It held its breath. Dawn came not with light, but with the faintest shift in weight, as if the heavens themselves knew something was coming, and they dared not move. No thunder rolled. No breeze stirred the golden banners along the halls. The walls of Valaskjalf stood still, untouched by sound or time. Odin sat alone, the All-Father, gray-bearded, one-eyed, wrapped in a cloak that knew every wind of the 9 realms, stood not on a battlefield, but before silence. His wolves, Gary and Freki, lay by the door, unmoving. His ravens had not yet returned, and that was not right. He leaned on his spear, Gungnir, the runes etched along its shaft glowing faintly, whispering truths only he could hear. But even they now spoke slower, as if time was folding in on itself. Valaskjalf's high hall, where once songs of victory echoed, was quiet. There was no feast, no laughter, no clash of goblets or chant of skalds, only the creak of old beams. Each of the gods had felt it, something beneath their bones. Not fear, but inevitability, and so they came. Not summoned, but drawn, like stars to gravity, like leaves to the wind. Frigg arrived first. Her hands held a golden thread. She did not look at it. She merely held it between her fingers as if unsure whether to pull or let it fall. Her eyes, once bright with foresight, seemed clouded. She did not speak to Odin. She stood beside him, and that was enough. They had not spoken of Balder in many moons. Thor came walking. His steps were slower than usual. He did not ride a chariot. He did not summon lightning. He walked, the god of thunder, breaker of mountains, hammer of chaos. Arrived in silence. Mjolnir hung at his side like a memory, and though his shoulders were strong, they drooped slightly. He looked not at his father nor his mother. He looked to the sky and said nothing. From Vanaheim they came, Frey and Freya, not with joy nor song, but with calm like the sea before it cracks with ice. Freya's cats did not follow her. Frey's golden boar did not grunt. The magic they carried, satyr and sun, hung heavy behind their eyes. They embraced no one, they bowed to no one, but they stood with the Aesir, and that was enough. Beyond the halls, at the threshold of realm and nothingness, stood a shadow, Loki. He did not enter. He watched. His eyes, half closed, reflected neither sorrow nor anger, only distance. The mists clung to his cloak like fingers of forgotten promises. He held no weapon, bore no grin, wore no mask, just silence. The gods did not beckon him. He did not speak, but all of them felt it. The tilt of the world had begun with him. And still, he watched. His presence was a wound in the air, not open, but unhealed. Odin did not look toward him, yet in the Allfather's hand the spear tightened slightly. At the center of Asgard a long table had been laid, not with feast, with memory. No plates, no mead, no roasted boar or gleaming horn, only a single candle before each god, flickering against the high-beamed roof. They did not sit as kings or warriors. They sat as siblings, as strangers who had grown old in the same house and now waited for something they could not name. Each candle flickered with a different flame. Thor's danced angrily, sputtering with unseen wind. Frigg's wavered gently, as if afraid. Freya's burned low but steady, and Odin's was almost still. Heimdall stood at the edge of the rainbow bridge, not as a warrior, as a gate. His eyes, sharper than any falcon's, scanned the void. He did not blink. In his hands rested Gjallarhorn, ancient and cold. He had not lifted it, not yet, but its presence in his grip sent a tension through the bridge, like a held breath before the scream. He saw things no one else could, not shapes, but shifts. The light beyond Jotunheim flickered in a way it should not. A star blinked twice, then never again. And so he waited, the first to see, the last to sleep. A sound broke the hush, not thunder, not wind, a wing beat. From the high reaches of the sky, Hugin descended. He circled once, twice, then landed on the beam above Odin's head. The old god did not move. The raven tilted its head, as if uncertain. Its feathers were wet, not with rain but with dew from another realm. It cawed once, and silence fell heavier. Munin did not return. Beneath them all the world tree whispered. Its roots, ancient and deep, trembled with a sound that no ear could hear. From Helheim to Alfheim, from Midgard to Muspelheim. Every leaf held its breath. It was not the end. Not yet. But the shape of things to come had begun to form in the dark beneath bark. Odin closed his eye. Not in weariness, but in knowing. He had seen it, not just once, not just in dream. He had seen it folded across all time, tangled in the strands of the Norns. And still he had come here, still he had gathered them, not to stop it, but to meet it. From the cold edges of the world, where the wind spoke only in silence, Skadi came. She did not ride. She did not fly. She walked, alone, wrapped in furs woven from winter itself. The mist parted for her as if remembering pain. She said nothing. Her face bore the calm of snow just before it crushes a tree. She carried no smile, no tears, only the stillness of the mountain from which she came. The gods parted for her wordlessly. Freya bowed slightly, only once. Skadi nodded in return. It was enough. In the far corner of the hall stood Tyr. He had been there long before the others arrived. He was not absent. He was not overlooked. He simply was. His right sleeve hung empty, folded at the elbow where his hand once lived. He did not hide it. Of all the gods, Tyr was the most still. He did not glance at the others. He did not speak of Fenrir. He did not need to. Loss had already carved itself into his form. He was the shape of sacrifice, and sacrifice makes no sound. Two more came, quiet as breath. Vidar and Vali, Odin's sons, one born for vengeance, the other born for after. Vidar's boots were thick with dust from the edge of the world. He had not spoken a full sentence in 100 winters. Vali, barely more than a youth, had eyes like freshly frozen river water, clear but deep. They stood together, not as brothers, as balance. One seat remained untouched. No god approached it. No one cleaned its surface. It had not been moved, Baldur's place. It sat beside Frigg's, close enough to reach for, too far to hold. No one dared place a candle before it. No flame would stay lit there. And still, the gods did not speak his name. But in the space between glances, in the moments between breaths, he was there, not in body, but in the ache of absence. Odin had not moved. Since the first had entered until the last arrived, he had stood there, silent, a man who had seen all, not with both eyes, but with one traded for wisdom. Gungnir rested against his palm like a question yet to be asked. He did not weep. He did not tremble. He did not breathe deeply. But within his silence there was motion. A storm held beneath the ocean. He had seen the end, not as myth, not as prophecy, as memory. And still, he remained. There were no speeches, no toasts, no oaths sworn under starlight, but the gods looked at one another, and in those glances, whole lifetimes passed. Freya's eyes met Thor's. Skadi met Tyr's. Frigg, briefly, looked toward Loki, but he was no longer there. What could they say? They were not mortals. They knew that words often failed in the face of certainty. Instead, they shared a kind of stillness, a final communion of silence. The sky changed. It did not crack. It turned, from blue to steel, from steel to violet, from violet to blood red, as if some unseen fire had reached through the fabric of the heavens and begun to write its name in smoke. The gods did not look up. They already knew. The sun somewhere beyond the clouds flickered like a dying candle. The moon, pale and watching, began to weep frost, and beneath it all the world tree stirred. Its bark did not break, but it breathed deeply. The roots, once firm, now hummed with something ancient, not pain, not fear, recognition. The tree did not fight. It did not resist. It accepted. The branches whispered in languages lost to even the gods. The runes on Odin's spear glowed in reply. Odin stood, not because he was called, not because a signal had been given, but because it was time. He raised Gungnir, but did not strike. He opened his mouth, but did not speak. His eye, bright and endless, looked across the gathered. Each god met his gaze. None flinched. He gave them no orders. Instead he turned and walked to the great doors of Valaskialf. They opened not with magic, but with sound. Old wood groaning under the weight of what it knew must come. And then, nothing. The gods followed, one by one, quietly, without armor, without crowns. When the last had gone, the hall stood empty. Only one candle remained lit. It flickered, once, twice, then steadied, as if unwilling to extinguish until all memory had passed through the threshold. The door remained open, and beyond it the dark did not roar. It waited. It began with a sound no one heard, not a roar, not thunder, a pressure, like something ancient shifting deep beneath the crust of the world, not to rise, but to remember. The Bifrost Bridge, gleaming and glorious, trembled, just once, so faintly that even Heimdall did not feel it, but the light that ran along its rainbow spine flickered, its color, once brilliant, dulled for the briefest moment. Like a memory growing uncertain, a crack appeared, not wide, not deep, but real, and with it the balance tilted. Below the 9 realms, in the quiet soil that fed the roots of Yggdrasil, something stirred, not movement, not fire, not storm, a breath. The earth held its tension like a drum stretched too tight. Moss peeled from ancient stones. The soil shifted as if unsure of its own memory. The roots of the world tree pulsed, dimly, with a red light that had no source. It glowed for an instant, then faded, as though shy of its own truth. But the creatures beneath noticed. The serpents in the hollows slithered upward. The worms stopped their crawl, and in Niflheim the mists thinned, just enough to see the shape of something vast, still distant, but moving. Heimdall felt it next, not the crack, but the absence, a stillness where movement had always been, a pause in the beat of the world. He straightened, eyes scanning the horizon. The wind pressed harder against him, as if trying to warn. His white cloak billowed. His fingers curled tighter around Gjallarhorn. He said nothing, but the muscles in his jaw twitched. In his vision, beyond Midgard and past the edge of Jotunheim, the ice mist had begun to curl inward, as though pulled by breath, not from Asgard, but from something beneath it, something rising. The first mountain fell in silence. It did not crash, it sank, a slow descent into its own shadow. Snow rushed down its side like spilt milk, caught by the wind and scattered over 100 miles. Then the second mountain shook, not from within, but from above, as if something had walked across its spine. The mists in the valley parted, not from wind, but from heat, a kind of steam that rose from nowhere, and in that steam a silhouette appeared. Then another, not clear, not near, but enormous. The Jotnar had begun to move. The sun blinked, not once, but slowly, like a candle suffocating in a jar. The sky did not go dark. It went quiet. Clouds gathered, not from the corners of the world, but from its center. A spiral of smoke and light, coiling like a snake ready to strike. The light that filtered through turned amber, then rust, then blood. Birds did not flee. They froze. High in the branches of Yggdrasil, the leaves turned not gold, but gray. The day still held its shape, but its heartbeat was wrong. Odin walked slowly toward the gates. He did not call out. He did not summon the Einherjar. Not yet. His footsteps echoed. Not on stone, but in memory. Each step was a ripple. Behind him the great hall of Valaskjalf stood still, its doors open like arms unsure whether to embrace or push away. Gungnir did not glow, it pulsed. The runes along its shaft shimmered faintly, like a warning whispered too late. And though Odin's face was calm, his one eye held a storm. Far across the burning horizon where fire met frost, a shape rose, not fast, not wild, but steady. Surtur, the fire giant, the Endbringer, the one who had waited not in rage, but in patience. His sword, older than flame, lifted itself toward the sky as if to greet a familiar foe. The blade did not burn, it devoured. Even from Asgard the gods could feel its heat, not on their skin, but in their thoughts. It was not yet swung, but it would be, and the world would remember its name. Heimdall raised the horn, for the first time in an age. He lifted Gjallarhorn to his lips. His hand did not tremble. The gods, wherever they stood, turned toward him. Even the winds stilled as if to listen. And then, a sound, not heard in thousands of winters, rang across all 9 realms. It was not a call, not a scream. It was a sentence, a truth too loud to ignore. The giants did not flinch. They marched. They gathered, not with armor, not with speeches, but with eyes that no longer looked away. From the highest wall of Asgard, they stood together. Odin at the center, Thor at his right, Freya to his left, and all the rest behind. No banners flew, no drums beat, only the faint distant tremor beneath their feet. And when they looked out, beyond the void and over the mist, they saw the dark shapes moving through the haze. Limbs the size of trees, eyes like frozen suns. The Jotnar were coming. Bifrost broke, not like glass, like faith. Each color shattered into the air. Red first, then blue, then the hidden colors no eye was meant to see. The cracks split from the center outward, a spiderweb of splintered light unraveling into the void. The first Jotun stepped through. The bridge screamed, not with voice but with memory. It had carried gods. Now it collapsed under monsters. And when the final beam fell, the sky did not weep. It recoiled. Yggdrasil trembled. not the leaves, not the branches, the roots. They twisted beneath the weight of fate, beneath the footfalls of giants older than song. Flames rose not from Muspelheim, but from within the cracks of Midgard itself. And where those flames licked the air forgot to breathe, the animals fled, the stones split. Even the shadows tried to move away. The balance of the world bent, and for the first time since the first dawn, it nearly broke. They stepped forward, not to attack, not to shout, but to stand. For this was not a battle, it was the meeting of truths. Odin looked across the ruin of the bridge, his one eye steady. Thor exhaled once. Freya closed her hand around her blade. Tyr nodded to no one. No war cry rose. No divine light shone. Only silence. And the long shadow of the end reaching out to greet its maker. Before the first blow fell, there was silence, not peace, not stillness, but a silence so thick it made the bones ache. The 9 realms trembled, not from violence, but from the tension of what they knew must happen. The gods stood on the scorched threshold of Bifrost's ruin, armor quiet, eyes fixed on the horizon. The giants towered beyond, their breath steaming the air, their muscles tight with destiny. And in that breathless moment, the world forgot to spin. Thor stepped forward, not with rage, but with memory. He had faced Jörmungandr before, but never like this. The sky above twisted like a serpent's spine. Clouds darkened, split by lightning not yet called, and through that rift a shape moved, scales black as ink, eyes like molten gold, fangs long enough to scrape the stars. The Midgard serpent was waking, its body coiled around the edge of the world. But its gaze found Thor alone. Mjolnir pulsed in his grip, not from thunder, from recognition. Elsewhere, Odin walked away from the others, toward the place where prophecy had carved his name in stone, toward the mouth of the great black wolf, Fenrir. He did not run. He did not shout. He descended slowly, step by step, like a man returning to a dream he never wished to finish. Below, the wolf waited, larger than a hall, teeth like mountains, eyes like suns devouring themselves, but it did not attack. It watched, and Odin, he watched back. One had waited in chains, the other in visions. Both had known this moment would come. At the edge of all things Heimdall stood, the last guardian. His horn lay silent now, its duty done, and across the shattered span of the rainbow bridge a figure emerged from mist. Loki. No armor, no mask, no smile, only eyes. Old, tired, and sharp as blades dulled from too many betrayals. Heimdall did not raise his sword. Loki did not lift his hands. They simply faced one another. Two forces bound not by hatred, but by balance. Heimdall exhaled. Loki blinked, and the storm began. It did not begin with a trumpet. It began with the earth. The ground beneath the gods cracked, jagged and glowing with fire from the depths. Frost burst upward from Jotunheim, meeting flame in a hiss that echoed like a scream. The sky peeled open, revealing nothing, not stars, not gods, just black, pure, eternal black. And then, a roar. Thor's, Fenrir's, the world's? No one could say, but all moved at once. The battle had begun. Thor leapt into the storm, not with fury, with focus. Mjolnir sang in his hand, not a tune but a pulse, as if the hammer itself remembered every time it had struck the serpent before. From the broken clouds Jormungandr rose, not from sea, from void. Its body coiled through the air like smoke made solid. Each scale shimmered like oil on fire. Its eyes locked with Thor's, and the air between them cracked. They met above the earth, hammer to fang, god to world. The heavens wept fire. Jormungandr struck fast, faster than memory, faster than time. Its body wrapped around Thor mid-air, tightening like fate itself. The sky dimmed, Mjolnir vanished beneath the coils. But then, a flicker, a heartbeat of thunder, a blink of light, and lightning exploded from within. Thor's roar cracked the clouds. He burst from the serpent's grip, body glowing, hammer returning to his hand like a promise. He landed not on ground, but on the serpent's back, and the battle began again. Below, Odin descended the final hill. Fenrir lowered himself, not to spring but to wait. The wolf's breath steamed the air in long ribbons, his tongue flicking across broken teeth. His chains, now shattered, lay in pieces like old lies at his feet. Odin walked without haste, each step like a bell rung in deep snow. He carried no shield, only Gungnir, and the spear did not tremble. They faced one another, one eye against two suns, one breath between them. Odin whispered a name only the wolf remembered, and Fenrir listened. Heimdall and Loki moved in silence, not like warriors, like mirrors. Every step Heimdall took, Loki matched, not to mock, but to understand. They had watched one another across ages, across choices made and unmade. Now they circled, not from strategy, but from grief. Gjallarhorn was silent at Heimdall's back. Loki held no blade, only flickers of flame dancing in his palms. It was not a duel. It was an ending, and both of them knew who would fall, and both of them knew it would be both. Thor struck, not once, not twice, but with every weight of the storm behind him. Mjolnir found its mark beneath the serpent's jaw. A crack echoed not through air, but through memory. Jormungandr reeled, its body whipping like a tidal wave torn in half. Black blood rained down from the sky. Smoke curled from the wound, but the serpent did not fall. It hissed, a sound that bent the trees sideways, that shattered shields in Midgard, that silenced birds across the 9 realms. Thor's chest heaved. The storm had begun to cost him. The sky broke, not from thunder, but from the weight of too much destiny. Thor hurled Mjolnir one final time, its arc slow, its light dim. It struck Jormungandr between the eyes. The serpent shuddered, its entire body convulsing, arching high above the earth like a mountain uprooted. Then it fell, and Thor fell with it. Together they crashed into the sea, waves rising like walls, foam curling like white fire. For a moment, nothing moved. Then a bubble rose. Then silence. Thor had slain the serpent. but the venom already in his veins. Odin did not run, he did not dodge, he waited as Fenrir lunged, jaw wide, limbs like storms, eyes aflame. Odin raised Gungnir, the spear glowed faintly, a light carved from the first fire, the end of time. It met the wolf's chest, but it did not stop him. Fenrir roared, the sound tearing holes in the air. Gungnir sank into fur and flesh. Odin did not blink, and still the jaws closed. The jaws of Fenrir shut, not with speed, with purpose. Odin vanished into shadow and fang, his cloak fluttering in the beast's mouth, his spear falling to the ground. Silent. The world tilted. The All-Father was no more. No trumpet sounded. No cry rose. Only the wind howling like a widow across Yggdrasil's roots. And the gods turned, not in panic, but in pain. The moment they had dreaded had come, and they still stood. For now, they met not with rage, but with knowing. Heimdall's sword struck flame, Loki's daggers found light. Every motion was a mirror, every blow personal. They bled. They gasped. They paused. Not out of weakness, but remembrance. They had been watchers, and now they would be witnesses. Loki whispered something. Heimdall nodded, and then they struck one another. At the same time, two lights flared, then went out. The field was broken. Bodies of gods and giants lay entangled, not as enemies but as echoes. Fire crackled where trees once stood. Ash fell like snow. Blood, red, gold, and black, streaked the soil. The air itself seemed thinner, like breath refusing to stay. Of the gods few remained, of the Jotnar fewer. But neither side had won. There was no victory, only loss, only silence, and the flicker of something waiting beneath the ashes, something not yet born, something watching. It was not quiet, not yet. The wind still moved, slowly like an old memory trying to leave the body. Ash fell soft as snow, not a blizzard, a hush. The battlefield no longer roared, it exhaled. Here lay Mjolnir, cracked at the handle. There, Gungnir, still glowing faintly in the soil. No hand reached for them. No foot disturbed the dust. Fenrir no longer stood, his body, once vast as night, now sagged into itself. Bone cracked, muscle unraveled, teeth dulled. Beneath him Gungnir still pulsed, but its light was dim. It had fulfilled its promise. And though Odin was no longer, the ground whispered his name in the way dust clings to roots. The wolf's eyes closed slowly, and the world took a breath. Far from land, the sea stilled. Its surface, silver and flat, held no waves, only the outline of what once battled beneath it. Thor Jormungandr, curled in silence, like two old enemies buried in the same dream. Fish did not swim near. Birds did not fly above. The ocean, like the sky, forgot how to speak. On the edge of all things, two bodies lay side by side. Heimdall, Loki. Their final moment, still echoing, hung in the mist, not as violence, but as conclusion. Gjallarhorn, cracked and silent, rested between them. Heimdall's hand still near its mouth. Loki's fingers curled inward as if holding something he could no longer shape. Their fight was over. So was their story. Asgard burned, not with fire, but with memory. The golden halls fell in silence, each stone sliding from place like tears from a face too tired to weep. There was no screaming, no rush to save, just warmth, as if the sun had leaned too close and kissed the roof goodbye, and in that soft mist of golden ruin, nothing stirred. Even the gods' thrones stood empty, their backs broken like promises long kept. Yggdrasil wept, its branches once proud, now sagged low, not broken, bent, as though the tree had listened to too many endings, and could no longer hold the sky. Two ravens sat upon one limb. Only one moved, the other was still. Hugin, Munin, thought and memory. They did not call, they only watched, and the tree, deep in its roots, dreamed of saplings. In the far fields the frost began to melt, no sun pierced the clouds, no warmth pushed from the sky, but still. The ice wept, and beneath the tears, sprouts curled toward the surface. Not green, not yet, but alive. The ash above them held no weight, only silence. And from that silence, roots whispered. In the forest where trees had burned to bone, a figure stood, small, uncertain, hair white as frost, eyes wide with something not fear, but awe. The figure wore no crown, carried no weapon, spoke no name, but the forest leaned toward them. Branches once dead twitched slightly, a greeting, a memory of spring, and the child stepped forward. Night came, not with stars, with moonlight, soft, round, unblinking. It rose over cracked stone and broken hill, over the bones of giants, over the dust of gods. It did not judge, it simply watched, and where its glow touched the earth, some places healed. Not fully, not quickly, but enough. One flame remained, in a temple with no roof, on an altar with no god, a single light burned. No one lit it, no one protected it, but it burned, not brightly, not tall, but true. And around that flame the wind bowed. Someone walked from the edge of ruin through the dust, across forgotten paths, no destination, no map, no past. Each step left a glow in the ash, faint, soft, fleeting, but a trail. Behind them the silence thickened. Ahead the sky brightened. Then a light, not fire, not lightning. The sun rising, slowly, uncertain, but rising. And with it, a warmth not felt in ages, a promise, not spoken, not sealed, but present. The gods were gone, the giants were dust, the battle was over, and yet a new breath had entered the world. The end had passed, and something else had begun. The world did not begin again with thunder. It began with mist. Ash clung to the hills like old blankets, and the earth split open in grief, breathed slowly for the first time. There were no gods in the sky, no giants in the forests, no voices, only a golden hush, the kind that comes after the last page is turned. When the story has ended, but the silence still carries its echo. From beneath a broken stone, a trickle of water began to move. It slid through ash curled between roots and gathered into a stream. No hand carved it, no rain called it. It simply arrived. And as it moved, tiny green shoots leaned toward its song, not bold, not blooming, but beginning. Life does not thunder back. It hums. Where once Yggdrasil stretched across the sky, a sapling stood, no taller than a child's arm. Its leaves were pale and soft, its bark new and thin, but it stood. The bones of giants beneath it did not groan. The echo of gods did not crush it. It belonged to this world, not the old, the one after. And when the wind passed, the sapling leaned toward it, as if to greet a friend. From deep within the earth light returned, not fire, not rage, a soft golden shimmer that spilled from a mountain's cracked face. It was warm, but not hot, bright, but not blinding. It moved slowly, like honey in the sun, and touched the world like fingertips on skin. Something old had died, something new had woken, something. The sea, once torn by battle, now slept. Its waves were soft sighs, its surface mirrored a pale pink sky, and on the edge of the shore a figure walked, not a god, not a beast, not yet known. Bare feet, white robe, hair like morning light. The sea did not pull them in, the wind did not push them back, it simply parted, as if it remembered them. From the mist he came, Balder, not as before, not shining with divine armor or echoing power, but with softness, with light that did not command, only invited. His feet touched no stone, his hands reached for no weapon. He looked at the world, not with sorrow, but with understanding, and the world welcomed him. Where once stood a temple of gods, now there were only broken columns and fallen archways. And yet, within the ruin, a glow began. Balder stepped forward. Each stone he passed remembered its place. Each shadow fled. He did not rebuild. He did not speak. He only stood. Where light had once lived, and because he stood, the light returned. The first to return were the foxes, then the birds, then the deer. One by one, as if invited by silence, no drumbeat, no call, only warmth. They stepped gently through the ash, sniffed the air, listened, and stayed, because the land no longer screamed. It whispered again. From a cave near the mountains, two figures emerged, a woman and a child, eyes wide, clothes torn, hearts steady. They looked at the sky, at the trees, at the river, at the flicker of life. And the child smiled, not because he knew what had happened, but because he felt what might come. Hope, like light, needs no explanation. A circle of stones, once a sacred place, breathed in the sunlight. Moss grew in the cracks, bees buzzed faintly through the air, and somewhere below the earth hummed. No priest spoke, no god appeared, but the stones glowed softly. Something ancient, something deep, had begun again. The new sun rose, not like the old one. This one moved slower, felt warmer. Its color was different, softer, more real. The hills turned gold, the sky soft violet, and the world stretched, as if waking from a very long sleep. There were no gods to name it, but there was someone to feel it. Balder stood beneath the rising sun. He did not cry, he did not sing. He simply opened his arms and let the warmth settle on his skin. The light passed through him, like it had been waiting for him all along. The air did not stir, but something inside the earth smiled, and in that silence, in that softness, a new world took its first breath.